Welcome to the Intentional Man Podcast, a podcast that inspires and equips Christian men to live intentionally, pursue God-sized goals, and build lives of significance. I'm your host, Jonathan McGinley, a Maxwell certified life coach, speaker, and trainer, and the founder of Intentional Man. In this podcast, you will hear inspiring stories, learn helpful life practices, and gain valuable insights on how to grow into the man God has made you to be. Welcome and enjoy the show. What would you say to somebody right now who, might be living a more passive lifestyle, but hasn't gotten to that point of rock bottom? How do you fight against passivity before you have to hit, a place like that? Because I feel like I see that all the time where it's like, we just do the same thing and just coast through until once we have that moment, then we really respond, and we might respond really well. But how do you kind of protect against that before you have to go through something that traumatic or tough?
That's $1 million question, Jonathan.
Yes, it is.
I think it starts with trying to be more self-aware, right? Where I have to be aware of where my anger is. I have to be aware of where I'm blaming, because I think blaming is a learning disorder, right? I mean, I stopped learning about myself if I could blame somebody. If life is going bad, then I need to blame means I need to find a villain.
Yeah.
Well, the minute I point my finger at somebody who I make them a villain, that immediately puts me in the space of victim. You can't have a villain without a victim. So I want to look at how my anger is doing. I want to look at ways I'm escaping reality. Am I drinking too much? Am I looking at stuff I shouldn't be looking at? Where am I avoiding? Am I eating too much? All these things that men do that in and of themselves they're not wrong, but if they do them to excess, I think it's a sign that we are ignoring some warning signals that are built in that can help us address these issues. But when we ignore them, we do so at great peril to ourselves and to our loved ones around us.
Yeah. That's really good. That's really profound. I think just thinking about that and self-awareness and having others, that makes me think just surrounding yourself with other men who can actually help you realize those things, because sometimes it's hard to see on your own, to actually see what you're doing. And so to actually have that awareness, sometimes you just need other people that you really trust that can kind of help speak into that, but also just that self-aware piece. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think that's brilliant. And that's a point that needs to be emphasized, right? Because I think, this is just my belief system, Jonathan, I think men get their power from two sources. Because I'm a man of faith, I think God is one, but I also think we get it from other men in close relationships. Most men, I did this, still maybe have a temptation to, most men try to get their validation and power from women, which is really not how we were wired. However, I will say this. What happened to me, my crash happened at 42, which is way too late. So there's a guy listening here, don't wait till 42. That's too late. The scars run deep. But I was always around men because I liked sports, and I was just more comfortable around men than I was around women. But it was pseudo relationships, not honest relationships where men spoke truth. We were vulnerable to one another. Your point is brilliant. We do need other men, but just because I'm hanging around men doesn't mean I need men to tell me the truth in a loving way, but I need men to tell me the truth, not just to always, because we men a lot of times give other men passes when we need to really stand up and confront some men who we see heading in places where they shouldn't go.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I do think there's a big difference there of having good male relationships where you talk sports and you have fun and you hang out and you do things together, which is great and that's needed. And I think that's a great outlet that we for sure need. But it does take just another level of intentionality to have those deeper conversations. And it's something that honestly I've kind of struggled to do over the course of my life. And I'm realizing more and more and more how important that is to go to those deeper places. Do you have any kind of tips or things that have worked in your life to kind of take your relationships deeper, or to find those, or to have the courage to actually speak up to your friends? Because that one's tough too, of just, if you see them doing something, it's hard not to want to, step on their toes. So any insights there?
Well, yeah, I think, well, for me, when I lost everything, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and I literally lost everything based, and there could be, and I had a story on why, until I realized, a friend helped me realize that it was all on my passivity. And I remember, and this is important, he said to me, I had no friends. He picked me up. We went to a bar. I told him my story, how my life just totally disintegrated. I'm crying in the bar. And he leans back and says, isn't God's grace wonderful? And I wanted to fly across the table and punch him. It's like, man,
for sure.
I'm talking about how my life's destroyed. How in the world can you say this is good? And then he said this sentence, I'll never forget it. He says, if your life is being built on a false foundation, the most loving thing that can happen is for that foundation to be blown up.
Wow.
I go, wow. Because my marriage was built on a false, my faith was built on a false foundation. My job, my friendships. So I had the gift of starting over. So I immediately got involved with men's groups, and there's a ton of them now. I won't tell you which one because there's so many of them. Yeah. But I think it's good for men to go to sometimes a men's weekend, because those are men who are like-minded, and we get in small groups and we set the parameters of what we want in our group moving forward. Because I think there's always in men, and this is big truth in my life, even though that happened at 42, I think there's always the tendency for men to lean towards their sword, if I could use that word, getting dull. And so we got to put ourselves in environments where we're challenged, and men who are willing to step up and challenge me and tell the truth, what they see, at great risk, right? And also to receive truth at great risk too, where I won't get defensive. So you have to find like-minded men who every year or whatever go away and will stretch outside their comfort zone. I hate going on those weekends. I never like going to them. I try to find a million reasons to avoid them, right? I hate it. Yeah. But I always come back and say, that was profound. Because the tendency in my life is to go softer and softer, even though I've seen the devastation of passivity.
Yeah. And like that leads you to be just super, like when you're trying not to make mistakes, it's really, really hard. I remember my
playing not to lose is different than playing to win.
Yeah, exactly. It's like my freshman year of college, I played college basketball, and I was like just getting spot minutes off the bench. And so every time I would come in, I was playing not to make a mistake, like not playing to win, not playing to like make something happen, just like, I can't make a mistake or I'm going to get pulled. and I did not play very well when you play like that. But it's like, like when we play not to make mistakes, it becomes a dangerous game because we're apathetic. When we go and channel all our energy into the wrong things, it becomes a dangerous game. So it's this redirection into what matters. And I think where that starts is you got to have a bigger vision for your life. You got to have a big vision. You got to know what's important. You got to know what your priorities are, and then figure out how to channel them in. So when did you kind of realize that this whole flipping the script thing and like helping people do that, when did that become like your main vision? When did you feel like you were called to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, early on after God got a grip on my heart, I thought it was more, I need to heal from these father woundings so that I could one day be a great pastor and be a great leader. But like it's just like a checkpoint. I got to get my baggage of my past behind me. And somewhere, I think it was probably 5 or 6 years into marriage, honestly, when we were having some really, really tough marriage stuff. A lot of that pain and hurt from my childhood was coming back up. And now my son is 5. And, he's 10 now, but at that time he was 5. And that's when my dad walked out. And I remember having to get counseling and inner healing and coaching. And men, do not be ashamed to get these things. I think everyone needs it at different times in their life. Counseling, looking back and trying to make sense of it and finding healing from it. Coaching, looking forward and attacking life and seizing the day. And but I remember talking to a counselor, and he's like, well, of course these things are resurfacing for you, and he's like, this is going to be a lifelong journey. In fact, this is a calling, and the calling's to not be your dad. Like, that was, for a long time, it was just don't be him. Like you said, playing not to lose.
Yep.
Well, that's a really low bar. So like, my goal in marriage is to not leave. My goal in my marriage is to not walk out. So like, well, that's not a good vision, because then if I showed up that day, even if I like half-heartedly showed up and didn't really pursue my wife or lead my kids, if I just didn't walk out, I'm better than my dad. And it was through counseling and coaching that I realized, no, I need a greater vision, that fresh waves of pain, like just like an onion, fresh layers of woundedness and pain and confusion will come as I continue to parent my kid. And I'm walking into the unknown because no one's modeled this for me. And yet I can tap on resources, and I can read books, and I can talk to coaches. But my vision needs to be becoming the fullest potential of the husband, father, and leader that God's called me to be, not trying not to be my dad.
Yes.
So I think that was I'd say probably 5 or 6 years ago. And that's what really led to, gosh, if it wasn't for me owning that, like, nope, I'm going to reach my blue sky potential, is what my current coach calls it. If I wasn't going to go after that, and I'm just going to settle, then I'm just going to keep backsliding in these. Like, I need to actually go somewhere and soar and fly and not just get stuck. So that's when, building a business was brought to the table. And that's when, not just, being involved in my kid's life, but like, hey, I think we're actually called to homeschool, and not everyone's called to that, but we just felt like we're going to instill our values into them. I'm going to be, not just kind of show up to the game reluctantly, like, man, what if I like helped coach him in this sport? And I just started raising the bar of like, what could be possible, rather than, I don't want to do that. So I guess I would call it being proactive instead of reactive.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it happened because of pain. It happened because the reactive method in my marriage was not working. And I kept self-sabotaging. But when I started getting proactive, and it was counselors and coaches that helped me heal and vision to do that, man, I look back now, and all 3 businesses that I'm a part owner in, the rental properties I have, the influence I have, the church that I have, everything I have, as far as like impact and eternal destiny, has been in the last 5 years when I decided to stop playing not to lose and start playing to win.
Wow. That's so cool. And I love what you just said there of like, not just accepting that as the low bar, because I think it's so easy to do that and even compare yourself to other people and think, oh, I'm ahead of that guy, or we're doing better than that couple, or, our kids are a little better there. But it's like, why do we set a low bar when there's a bigger vision of like, what does it mean to be the best father? Yeah. What does it mean to be the best husband? Not in a way where that's like your vain pursuit, but this, like, I'm going to be so intentional. I'm going to be so purposeful that I'm going to be the best possible version of myself I can be, and the best leader that I can be. And so don't set such a low bar. I think, as you're saying that, I'm like, oh, there's probably a lot of areas where I'm just, settling for a low bar, because I think that could be the standard, when that's not the kind of person I want to be. I know that's not the kind of person you want to be. And I think if you're listening to the show, that's not the person you want to be. We want to be intentional men who have a greater vision, and we work for it. It's like, I don't just want a decent marriage. I want a great marriage. If 50% of people end in divorce, it could be easy to say, okay, if we don't end in divorce, then that's a success, which it is. But like, have a vision beyond that of like, no, I'm going to have one that like thrives all the way to the end and continues to grow and get better and better and better. And, that's the kind of mindset shift that I think is super powerful that you're getting to. So I love that.
The long-term vision. Yeah, I was just going to chime in, because my marriage coaches, they have a vision of rolling down the nursing home together, laughing and playing games and still being best friends. And that's always stuck with me. Begin with the end in mind. If you have a short-term vision, then, you'll get short-term results. You'll if John Bevere talks about, being at a wedding, and if the world's going to end tomorrow and the wedding cake's in front of you, you're just going to have as much as you want. It's like, whatever. But if you have a long-term vision, like you're at that same wedding and you imagine yourself as the grandfather to your granddaughter's wedding, and you still want to boogie on the dance floor, you might just have one piece instead of, five pieces. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just a game changer when you actually start living with a forward future vision. And I think that if I could summarize, how did God shift my masculine perspective and focus and flip the script? It was, instead of using my masculine strength to be liked and to try to lord it over others, instead I used my masculine strength to love, to genuinely sacrifice for others, and to lead, to show and model a way and become a mentor, not to be liked or to lord it over, but to love, to serve, and to lead and show the way. And that's a little mantra that I use, because it helps me really discern, like, why am I going after this thing? Is it to be liked by others or lord it over others? Or is it to really genuinely love, to sacrificially serve, and to lead, to model and example a new way? So hopefully that resonates with someone out there, but that's kind of been a good filter.
Hey there, it's Jonathan. I hope you're enjoying the show. By the way, if you're a man who wants to grow, pursue God-sized dreams, and live a more intentional life, I want to personally invite you to join the Intentional Man membership. This is a place where you join like-minded men from all over the world to receive monthly training, resources, coaching, and a community that helps you become the best man you can be. It's definitely one of the best steps that you can take to get in an environment of consistent growth, support, and encouragement. So head on over to intentionalman.co/membership to learn more and gain access to a free short course. That's intentionalman.co/membership. Leave us with, when you think of leading, we got a lot of younger guys listening to this podcast. So some who are married, some who are not in relationships. When you think of leading your relationships well, what are some just practical tools or tips or pieces of advice that you would give to a young man who's saying, hey, I really want to excel in this. I want to lead well. I want to care about them. I want to have the invitation. So can you kind of take us down to more of a practical level of what that can look like, or what's worked for you?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. The practicals of a rich invitation is living your own successful life.
Yeah.
So the more you can get your life together, and if I'm just thinking of your listener right now. So I just like to say, take the time to think about your good habits that you want to foster. You want to use those and develop them. Write down those lists of strengths, good habits that you've got. And then write down the weaknesses. And so when you own those realities, keep focusing on those strengths of yours that you want to develop, and the weaknesses that you might need a mentor for, you might need a coach for, somebody who's going to help you get a grip of those things that are not serving you. My story includes some emotional abuse when I was 4 years old, which caused me to have panic attacks, thousands of panic attacks around the thought of dying. And those panic attacks lasted, 6 or 7 seconds. And I lived for 25 years on this planet, and not a soul, there was no one who knew about my panic attacks. They were so brief And so, yeah, nobody recognized it. I didn't know what they were. I was 4 years old when they started. Gosh, no, I couldn't say I'm having a panic attack right now. What I could say is
Right.
I'm experiencing what I think death is like, and it's horrific. So whatever is holding you back, whatever is holding our listener back right now, whatever it is, whether it's negative head trash, panic attacks, bad habits, weaknesses, thoughtlessness, self-centeredness, whatever it is, it's like, okay, well, welcome to the human race. If we're really going to be honest, we talked about, Jonathan, we talked about oxygen. Well, let me tell you what else I need. I need soap, water, deodorant, toilet paper, and mouthwash. Because without that, I smell like crap. And usually I use a slightly bit more vile word because it's just so honest. Soap, water, deodorant, toilet paper, and mouthwash. Because if I don't have that stuff, I stink. Now, somebody can live trying to pretend that they don't. And the only reason I say that is we're this mixture of dignity and depravity. And just because most of us here in the US have a ubiquitous supply, just like oxygen, of soap, water, deodorant, toilet paper, and toothpaste, we forget that we stink. So that recommendation to that young person is nurture your life so your life is satisfying you. You go to bed on not every night, but consistently with a sense of satisfaction that you're making good choices for your own self. Because that gives you the moral authority to invite a woman to join you. To invite a woman, come live an adventure with me. This is where I'm going. This is where I believe my life is focused. I want you to join me. And when you join me, I'm going to love you well. And we're going to have a rich life together. We're not going to have a perfect life together because I'm not a perfect person and you're not a perfect person. But let's define what success looks like. Let's define this loving relationship. And let's commit ourselves to that. Notice the invitation there. Come join me.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you're here, Carl. This is great.
Thank
you so much. No, so good. I just, I love that you started there of you have to, what it made me think of was you have to be able to lead yourself well before you can really have an invitation to lead others well. It's kind of what I was thinking when you were talking about all that. To invite somebody to a life and to lead somebody, if we're not taking care of ourselves, if we don't have that moral authority, like you said, like why is anyone going to come join the adventure if our adventure is a train wreck?
Boy, that's well put, Jonathan. That's well.
What would you say are some key fundamentals, key components to making sure we're leading ourselves well and that we have that moral authority to then invite others to join us in our adventure?
That's a great idea or a great question. Let's see if we can break it down a little bit. So we live inside these things we call bodies. And so if we're fooling ourselves by eating crap, we're going to pay the piper sooner or later. Our whole health system is, I believe it's called the allopathic approach, which is treat the symptoms. So what I would challenge our listener to right now is be realistic. If you think you're going to have a healthy body by eating donuts, Twinkies, and soda pop, you're fooling yourself. You're just fooling yourself. So if you can't nurture your own body by caring for it, you're setting yourself up for failure. Your teeth are going to rot. Your blood pressure is going to skyrocket. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the generation of babies being born right now, like my 3 grandchildren born within the past 2 years, their life expectancy is the lowest yet, at least in the last 50 years, maybe since tracking, because of the crappy food that we ingest, processed food, unhealthy stuff. So start with, are you actually nurturing your body? Then the next thing is, are you keeping it fit? Now, I want to tell you something. In my own life, I was really fit from the time I was 13 or 14. I was trying to be the world's best water skier. And water skiing is a great workout. When I gave up that passion, that's when I started to gain weight. And I was way confused. Gosh, I wish I had a coach in my life back then, because I was so confused. My purpose was gone. And all of a sudden, Jonathan, I couldn't stop eating because I was just lost. I was purposeless. And food gave me some short-term satisfaction. It was a drug at that point. It wasn't nourishment. It was a drug. And so when we aren't making healthy choices for ourselves, and I sure wasn't then, we just don't have the capacity, we don't have the moral integrity to help someone else. You know, that thing of love your neighbor as yourself. So I remember when I thought, okay, I need to start working out. Now, for the listener who hates to work out, I'm just going to say, find something you can do. I remember I love starting small, and I started to get back into health when my children were just toddlers. And I told my wife, I said, honey, I'm going to just take a 5-minute walk. And that's what I did, just took a 5-minute walk. And that 5-minute walk, after a while, turned into a 10-minute walk. And then it turned into 5 minutes of jogging and 5 minutes of walking. And 30 years later, all of that turned into jogging to the top of a 14,000-foot mountain when I was living in Colorado. And then, I don't know, 6 months after that, I hiked down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and jogged out of it. It was a gas, by the way, freaking slow, but I did do it nonstop. Freaking slow.
That's amazing.
But it was nonstop.
Amazing.
So the cool thing about that is it started with a 5-minute walk.
Yeah,
so,
that is really cool.
So coming back to, what does it take? I started with the body. Then there's this thing of your job. Now, let me describe compensation, Jonathan, in just 2 words. In the free enterprise system around the planet, all of us are compensated based on just 2 words: how well we deliver value. Think about it. Your name is Mark Zuckerberg. You delivered a little bit of value called Facebook to 1 billion clients. That's why he's worth so many billions of dollars. And so look at a pro, football quarterback who's paid, 30, 40 million a year. Yeah. The value that he's delivering, we don't determine value. The world determines value, and our world seems to really value football. So if you're really, really good as a quarterback, you're going to be paid tens of millions. If you work at a fast food joint, it's about $10-12 an hour, give or take. That's the value you deliver. No one's going to hire you at Club Mac, at McDonald's, or any other fast food place and say, I want to pay you $200,000 to cook my French fries for me. No, there's not enough value in it. Now, if you're a heart surgeon or a brain surgeon, there's a lot of value delivered to that patient.
No doubt.
And so the whole idea, when a young man is thinking about his life, he better figure out how he's going to deliver value. So you're taking care of your body, but you're also taking care of your finances. As best as I can tell now, living 6+ decades, we pretty much deal with money our whole life long. Might as well learn to deal with it well. And here's a question that somebody can ask. And I think every man, every person should ask this question of their employer. What could I do that would cause you to want to give me, fill in the blank, a $5,000 bonus, a $10,000 bonus? You're not saying, I just want you to give me money. You're saying, I want to earn it. I want to earn it. Is there anything that I could do? Is there anything that I could do that you would actually be happy to give me a bonus?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, here, let me offer you a $10,000 bonus right now. If you just refer someone who compensates me $100,000 for my executive coaching, I'll be glad to give you a $10,000 bonus. So the only reason I'm pointing that out, Jonathan, is it's not greed. It's the desire to be valuable.
Yes.
And you can tie that right back into marriage. I'm going to love you well. I'm going to value you well. I'm going to treat you like a lady, like a woman. I'm going to care for you. I'm going to respect you in your mind. By the way, I told my 2 daughters, I said, watch how I love your mom.
Yeah.
And when you go shopping for a husband, that sounds a little crude, but that's what we're doing, right? We're shopping for a spouse, a good match. I said, when you shop for a spouse, find a man who loves you at least as much as I love your mom. Now, use me. I'm at the bottom of the barrel. You can find somebody who loves you more. Great. Do you know, Jonathan, they listened to me. I look at my sons-in-law now, and they're rock stars. Man, I wish I had their maturity when I married Gina.
That's amazing.
Okay, so we covered.
That's so good. Physical.
Physical. We talked about professional. What you're, and to always ask value. Always this question of how can I deliver more value? It's
great. That's great.
That's a great way to cause your salary to continue to go up. Okay. Yes. And then there's the person that you are. Okay. And that's your passions. Now, whether it's reading and possibly maybe you want to start writing some fiction or nonfiction. Maybe you've got a passion for golf or sports or whatever. That brings out a whole other aspect of a human being. What's your passions? And how do you engage others to join you? I found a lot of my passions were solo type activities. I wasn't a team sport guy. I was a water ski guy. Gosh, so many of my sports have been solo. They're not team sports. So the question becomes, what are the things you're passionate about? And are there any that you can share with others?
Mm-hmm.
So that third thing is
follow your passions.
Yeah, follow your passions. Now, you shouldn't overvalue them, because you do have to provide it, for your family. But it does make you wonderfully alive. And again, the invitation is, I'm living a passionate life. How about yours?
Yes. That's all I've got for this episode of the Intentional Man podcast. One thing that would really help both of us and new potential listeners is for you to share this show with others, post about it on social media, and leave a rating and review. Thanks for joining me today, and until next time, remember to build a life you're proud of by living intentionally.